So generally in Boxcutter, when you enable snapping, you're generally inside of a system called dots. Dots has a very different type of perspective to it. However, it's our vanilla snapping method whenever it comes to Boxcutter. So if we hold control, we have our dot showing, and if I begin clicking and dragging from this edge, we see that we activated basically center equidistant draw for drawing from this edge, and we're able to perform our extrusion. However, when it comes to a face, if we were to just click and drag from this face, we see that we're drawing absolute center draw, basically allowing us to cut through this shape very evenly. So whenever it comes to our dot system, we have attempted to streamline our behaviors to be a little bit faster based on thousands of hours of box cutting done in the past. So whenever it comes to dots, just know that you can actually expect some things. For example, the ability to just draw straight out from both sides whenever you're using an edge dot, and the ability to draw it using center draw whenever you're using a face. However, there's an alternative system of dots that is less talked about but is a little bit more expanded in a different direction. So with dots out the way in a cursory way, we can expand on snap, and we see that there's a static area where we can enable basically static dots, and we see that once enabled, static dots will take over in the top bar, and from here we can begin talking about some of the features of static. So one of the things to note with static is that while you have dots up, if you were to press Q, you can actually remove dots, which is somewhat strange, but definitely something that I've become more into as I've become aware of it. Of course, keep in mind that we can hold control in order to keep that state, or release it and then press it again in order to bring our dots back. Another thing about static dots that's interesting is while holding control and shift, you're able to roll the wheel in order to perform a subdivision of dots. And so from here, if we click and drag, we're able to basically jump off these dots, but you see that the dots disappear the moment we begin drawing. If we expand the drop down, we see that there's an option for dot to dot snap, which means that when we click and drag from one dot, the dots don't disappear. It actually lets us go from dot to dot, just creating shapes. So just a more interesting way to work. Not something I use in my general box cutter experience, but definitely something that's very nice to have. If we press D, we can jump over to Ngon, and we see that Ngon is also able to play connect the dots, where we're able to just draw Ngon from dot to dot, progressing along this shape until we finally get back to the dot we need, and then click to extrude and complete. The next thing I want to talk about is alignment preview. So if we press escape, we can clear dots off the screen after they've been locked, and alignment preview will basically show an alignment preview of what your shape is going to draw as. So we see that when we look at alignment preview at this time, everything is fairly boring except for these two, and that's because if we press shift V, we're actually oriented to nearest edge. So that means if we were to say select these 2 points and put an edge in between them, our alignment dot will actually reflect us being able to draw oriented to this particular area. And maybe not so much with Ngon, but definitely with Box, we're able to orient it to these edges, and it gives us a nice little preview of what we're about to be drawing in a way oriented to. The next one I want to talk about is subdivision preview. With subdivision preview, whenever you hold control and shift and begin scrolling, you see that there's some subdivision lines appearing in between, just letting us know which ones are faces, which ones are edges, and which ones are verts. Over the course of testing out dot subdivision, it became apparent that maybe it would be good to be able to see these edges in between, just to assist on a debug sense when it comes to dealing with certain dots and the results that we get with them. But just letting you know that static dots is a slightly different method, kind of expanding in a different path than our general dots, which I feel are more behaviorally refined for us to be able to rapidly get from A to Z in a general workflow. But static dots offers us specialty behaviors for times where we need dots to behave in a way that's a little bit more static and a little bit more predictable, or we simply just need to use dot to dot to get somewhere in between, but also keeping things fairly congruent with the other shapes around.